Hello, everyone, and welcome to Grow My Etsy Shop podcast. Hey, welcome. Happy Friday. So, in today's episode, we're going to talk about the second store. So, yes, you can open a second store on Etsy. Is it a common practice? I would say it's getting more common, to be completely honest with you. And my opinion has actually shifted on it over the course of the years as I've just kind of been dealing with a lot of Etsy shops, working with a lot of people, seeing a lot of back offices. My views have changed on it. So I want to talk first why we're talking about it. So what is the reason we're even bringing up a second store or the need of a second store? Well, as many of you know, and I've kind of mentioned this, I would say a majority of people are sort of seeing a little bit of dip in their visits, their views in this summer. So when they're kind of looking at last summer compared to this summer, they're seeing some drops. Now that isn't everybody. In fact, I had a group of probably 9 or 10 people online yesterday, and we were all discussing. And of those people, there was a couple of people who were like, I'm having an awesome month. I don't know what anyone's talking about. This is doing great for me. July's awesome. But just the emails and the conversations that I get into, it's a lot of it has to do with, hey, my views are a little bit down. And, you know, we could talk about that, but I want to share why this is snowballed into the subject we're going to be talking about. The first thing is a lot of people see this and then they kind of freeze up, right? Oh my gosh, my views are down. I don't know what to do. And the reason that they freeze up, the reason they don't know what to do is because they've made their money selling a product on Etsy. And so when that product isn't getting enough views and, you know, this is going to domino into having lower sales, they freeze up because they're like, wait a second, I have spent my career on Etsy selling this product. People have bought this product, and then I've used the money from this product to fund my life. And so now I'm starting to see smaller increments of money coming in, and I don't know what to do. And I would say that the first sort of aha moment, and a lot of people hit this aha moment in their business and are either currently going through it, are going to go through it, or have been through it. And it's when you sort of have to say, who am I? Who am I? Like this. I should probably edit that out. I'll leave it in. There you go. You guys can enjoy it. Who am I? Am I... Gosh, I almost just kept going with my, I'm not going to do it. Am I the person who sells a product on Etsy, or am I someone who sells things online? So you have to identify who the person is. In fact, in the growth program, I have a section that works on this. And I think that sometimes, I've never had anyone accuse me of it, but so I can feel this way, that it's like filler work. Oh yeah, I have to work on my why, I have to work on my, who am I type stuff. And sure, you can look at it that way, but why do I have it? And I have trimmed the growth program so that it is as much meat as possible in a condensed amount of time. So instead of just, feeling like I got to get through the, how most stuff is, got to get through the fluff before I get to the meat. I've just trimmed to get that thing meaty. But I've left that section in, this section of who am I? And the reason I left this in is that if you are someone who sells a product on Etsy, your shelf life is about 2 years. You got about 2 years to sell a product on Etsy. Your product will run its course. And a lot of times, the reason we sell things on Etsy is that something sparks in us. We sort of see like, oh, there's this little niche, or hey, this thing's kind of trendy, or hey, I could do that better than what that person's doing. So we innovate and we create, or in a lot of people's cases, we see what's working and we mimic, and then we run and we go, wow, this is great. I sell things on Etsy. I am happy. Life is good. And then we start to see what I'm currently speaking about, which is this like, hey, I'm starting to see a dip in some stuff. And if we identify ourselves as I am someone who sells a product on Etsy, then we freeze up because or which is another common thing is we knock on Jared's door and we say, hey, Jared, my product stopped selling. Can you fix it for me? And sometimes we can. Sometimes yeah, there's things that are off, and we can get in and look at that. Sometimes we have to face the music, the reality of, look, are you just someone who sells a product on Etsy? Because the competition from what you were a year ago to today has densened. Is that a word? Has become more dense. Densened. That's not a word, is it? I don't know. Has become more dense. There's more people that are bidding for these keywords or for the search terms. And so as you are now showing up, there is more options. And with more options means someone's picture might look better than you. Someone's price point might be better than yours. Someone's reviews might be more appealing. Something might speak more in that. Some color might be. Something starts to chip away at that. Let's just say for every 100 search terms, you got 10 clicks when there was 10 competitors. Well, now if there's 20 competitors, we would assume that if all of them are better than you, you're toast. If half of them are better than you, you're still going to see a drop in what you're doing. And that isn't anything you can necessarily control. There's just more happening out there. Now you can improve, and that's usually the first step that we do is we say, hey, what you've been doing has worked for you in the past because it's not as competitive. Now that it's getting more competitive, we have to really go back to my analogy here, cut the fat out or cut the fluff out and really become lean in how we convert. And so a lot of what I do in the growth program, this wasn't supposed to be me talking about the growth program, is we work on that conversion and then we bring in more traffic, because that conversion is one of the fastest ways to get Etsy to move you up organically. As you're getting more clicks or winning more clicks because of the effort you put into your listing, and then as you're converting, that's a really great recipe for Etsy to move you up organically. And then I mix that with paid ads, and you got yourself some growth and some spurts going back into your store. Anyway, back to this. So if you're someone who sells a product on Etsy, that's what you identify as, you got 1 to 2, I would say 2 years, 2 to 3 years. That's probably the best way to say it. 2 to 3 years before you start to see, my gosh, I have to pivot. So the question is, how do we pivot? So if you're a fan of the podcast, you know this is what to do here. And ironically, I'm just kind of going through the growth program with you here. So once we kind of say, this is who I am, I'm a business owner, I'm going to sell things online, I have a skill set, and it's to be able to do what I'm doing, and I want to bring that to the masses. Great. Who are those people? Is the next step that you kind of go into. And so there's a reason someone wakes up in the morning and searches for you. There's something that's going on in their head. Why did they log on to Etsy, search into a search box, your specific keywords, and then have their wallet out and be ready to purchase? What is someone's desires? Why are they choosing? This is a great question. Why do they choose you? You aren't number one on Etsy. There's not a lot of you listening to this podcast that have a number one spot on Etsy. So if your business model is, well, people buy from me because they see me, okay, probably not the case. There's probably other people who are there. So what is it about you that makes them buy you? And this is a question that's hard for people to answer, because they say, well, I don't know. And some people say, well, I don't know. I might buy from my competitor. There's some things I like about them over there. And that's the way you want your brain to sort of think, because it allows you to, but let me push this one step further here. You don't want to think like a loser, which is, well, gosh, I don't know why someone would choose me. Like Eeyore, whoa, poor me. No. You have to have a little bit of a fire in you to say, I get why someone would buy from them, but let me tell you why me. And if you can't get into an elevator with someone and convince them to buy your product over your competitors, that's why that's probably why you're losing. And so you have to have that skill set and that ability to look at what you're doing and be better. Now, to be better, you have to know who you're talking to. There is a certain reason why people do what they did. Today I got up early and I mowed my lawn. I have a freaking football field for a lawn. You guys know this. I recently moved and I'm about ready to move back to my old house because I have spent hours on that stupid lawn mowing this thing so that my kids can look at it from the window. And I mean, we're in North Carolina. It's a hot summer. And so someone would say, oh, well, Jared is a guy that spends a lot of time on his lawn and likes a nice lawn. And there's truth to both of those. I do like a nice lawn. I do obviously now spend a lot of time on my lawn, but that isn't who I am. So what are the products that I would purchase for lawn is probably different than the person who's hedging his, getting that weed whacker out and getting a straight line down the thing. I'm not doing that crap. I'm freaking, I come in and I look like I just got back from war because of how hot and how much grass there is out there. Anyway, that's a podcast for a different day. That's not who I am. And so if someone was to get in an elevator with me and try to sell me a product that's going to make my lawn perfect, I would say, pound sand, bro. The last thing I want to talk about is this stupid lawn. I'm about ready to move. If they instead say, hey, recognizing this is your pain, Jared. This is why this is what you care about. This is what you care about when it comes to your lawn. The answer, in my scenario, would be like something that mowed my lawn faster, right? Like those have you guys seen those little robot lawnmowers? Now we're talking. Now I'm like, okay, what you got? They might not be perfect. They might not do a great job. Some guy that's out hedging his lawn perfectly isn't going to love it. But Jared is. So that's the idea. If you are going to target a specific person with a specific product, with a specific idea, you have to know the specifics of the person. And once you know the specifics of the person, so once you identify who you are, which is I am a business owner who has the skill sets of being able to create these sorts of products, and I sell them online. That is my skill set. Not I sell a product online. You got a shelf life if that's who you are. But I'm a business owner who has these skill sets, who targets these people. That is a business model. And that will take you beyond those years marks because you're willing to adapt. You're willing to change. You're willing. There's some quote, you probably know it, where it's like the survivors aren't the biggest. It's the people willing to adapt. Those are the survivors, the people willing to change. When you see your business through this light, you present yourself differently. You show up differently. So like I mentioned, I was on a call with I was probably somewhere between 8 and 10 people on this call yesterday. It's my year-long coaching program that I do. And there's a difference between those who sell a product and those who have a business. And my hope and my goal is to sort of move people to that eye-opening experience of like, you have a skill set, you are a business owner, and you are adaptable. You can move, you can change, you can do this stuff. Okay, so now, I feel like I went a little bit on a passionate tangent there. Let's bring this back to just like this simple question here of, when does a second store make sense? Okay. When you are in the adaption, so I met with someone who's in the growth program, and they sold pet stuff, okay, and do well selling their pet stuff. This is a weird product. Well, I shouldn't say it's weird. It's a unique product. That same product that they were selling to pets could also work on babies. Now, I wish, you know this about me, I don't ever really tell that kind of stuff. I want to respect everyone and their privacy in that. But I would assume your curiosity just went through the roof. Because you're like, what on earth is someone dressing their babies in that also dogs would be wearing as well? Anyway, it crossed over. So from her, which was very smart of her. So she's got her categories in her store, and her store name, her store tagline, everything is pet, 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 pet. And then she sort of like started getting messages of people like, or I can't remember if it was messages or she started just seeing some keywords pop up that were more generic towards Homo sapiens. And so she was like, well, I guess I can try it. So she kind of changed some of her listings, or we shouldn't change. She duplicated some of her listings, flipped up the imagery, flipped up the titles and whatnot, and started getting people to purchase for their Homo sapiens. I'm going to start calling them humans now. I don't know why I made that transition into Homo sapiens. And so, babies, we'll call them. So as they started buying for their babies, she then started getting messages of people like, oh, didn't realize this was like a pet store. This is kind of weird, but yeah, I kind of want it for my baby. And she was like, yeah, totally. They're for babies too. No. And then she joined the growth program and she was like, hey, Jared, I'm in this pickle where people are like, I'm a pet store. And people are kind of recognizing that I'm a pet store. Well, let's just talk about this. So if in this scenario, if there was no other stuff in the future, it's like you just kind of sell this product. This is what you're doing. It's a hot product. The advice I would give is a rebrand in what she's doing. We're just going to shift what we're doing, because if it's naturally picking, if you were seeing those keywords show up in your store, Etsy's starting to send that traffic to you. And so you just naturally progressed Etsy's direction. That's completely fine. The hardest part of launching new products is teaching Etsy who you want to target and what you are selling. Boy, I said that weird. And what you are selling. Those are the two hardest things. And it's really difficult when you've had a hot streak down a certain avenue, targeting a certain person, selling certain products, and then you completely go off the rails to sell something else. That's really, really difficult. I don't usually see it happen. There was one person once in my life who was selling two completely different items. Now, hold on, because there might be more people like, wait a second, Jared. You can do different seasons of stuff. Some people sell Christmas ornaments and then they sell wedding decor or whatever. Like, yes, those are different people. I understand what you're saying. I mean, completely different. I've only seen it once in the growth program of someone who was successful doing it. Most people fall and burn in that process. However, if Etsy's sending you that little bit of traffic, usually it means you can broaden out. And that's the key, is broadening out what you're doing instead of targeting anew. So Jared, who cares about his lawn, what are other things that Jared cares about? If Jared cares about his lawn, or at least mowing his lawn quickly, what are other things that someone who wants to mow their lawn quickly could care about or would want? And how can I build a brand around that to sell other things and adapt and be more available? And the reason we think this way is, A, Etsy's not going to pretty much continue to send you the same person, but within new keywords. And that's what you're doing, is you're broadening out those keywords, which is really great. The other thing that it does is it transforms you from this product-based store to more of a store. And now you can cross-sell, you can promote, you can run things side by side, you can create bundles, you can bring value that way. And now, and you can hear based on what I was telling of this other girl who sells the human/pet things, people will feel cohesive where they are. You're a brand now, not a product. And we want to move away from product. And I feel like Etsy is in this motion, sort of going towards this. We want brands to be able to promote and to represent and to sell, which is great. A great move. Though, another thing we were talking about in our call was, did you guys get to see that membership thing where they're like, hey, we're going to offer free shipping for premium Etsy people? And it's like, okay, is that not Amazon? In fact, Steve, who was on the call, was like, aren't they trying to move away from Amazon? Isn't the most Amazon thing ever? Anyway, subject for a different day. So for this girl's case, it's like, yeah, we just kind of rebrand. And we sort of recognize that we have this product, and now we can sort of merge this way. But Etsy allowed it because she started to see people purchase for babies, or those keywords starting to come in, and just naturally rode that wave that's there. That's just someone who's on the ball, who's paying attention, who's thinking, I don't just sell a product and is locking themselves in this, but instead I'm going to build a brand in what I'm doing. However, she started to take wind of this baby thing, and then she was like, hey, I want to jump head into this baby things. I want to start selling all sorts of baby materials, and I'm already working on this kind of stuff. I've got a whole line taking place of all this baby stuff. So now here's the question. What do I do? The advice I gave her, and this was after we had spent a good amount of time on the phone really going through this, is that in that scenario, I said I would open a second store. Because you're product heavy, right? She's a store that sells a specific type of product, and that product is getting it stayed in the pet region for a long time, and then it started to swing out into this baby region. This doesn't mean, all right, it's time, let's go ham, let's do our thing. And so she would have better success if she opened a new store and filled in with that baby stuff. So the reason her pet thing was doing so well was that it just wasn't, there's just not a lot of competition for the baby side of what she was doing. And so if she takes that baby thing over into a new store, she's now essentially going to create another listing that Etsy will promote. So she still has her original listings on her store, her pet store, and then she has her baby ones that are going. And the baby ones can start to take some work, and then she pulls off of her pet store and leaves what she's doing up. So she starts to then take that off of her pet store, and now she can build her pet store and stay within the pet niche and build a baby off of a product she already knows is going to do well because it's doing well in this particular store. Does that make sense? So she got data from her store and was like, wait a second, I could do a whole other, I could just sell this product to babies, but you're going to cap yourself, or I can open up a whole line over here. And so she was saying, I'm already doing this stuff for pets. Why don't I just do it for babies over here? And then I can have a baby and I can have a pet store. And the answer to that is yes. That is the appropriate time to open a second store. You open the second store when you recognize that your products can cross over at a large amount. We don't open second stores when we have an idea of a new product. You're just going to product base yourself. So then, I got a store that does products here. I got a store that does product here. And now you're just a person who sells products on different Etsy stores. The best way to scale, the best way to grow is to say, look, I've got a funnel. I've got people coming into what I'm doing. I'm broadening out these keywords. I'm creating other ways to serve this niche that I currently have. And I think I can take my production and transfer it into a completely new niche. So that's key there. Meaning because we don't want to split what we're doing, especially if we're successful. But I can take a lot of what I'm doing or what I've learned and do it over here. That's when I find it appropriate to open a second store. I can take what I've learned. I can take what I'm doing. I can take some of my systems, because this is getting more complicated than I want it to. What I don't want is someone who's putting 100%. I don't want you to take 100% out of one store so that you can go 50-50 into two stores and then have someone else putting 100% in beat you because does that make sense? They're putting 100% into their store. You're only putting 50% in because you have two stores. So the only reason we're going to do that is if the systems and the what you're doing, and there's a lot of crossover, but it's a completely different niche that you could say, hey, I'm already sewing. I'm already doing these things. I'm already buying this fabric. I already have these things. I could hit humans now with it. That's when I feel comfortable going that direction. So in those scenarios, instead of rebranding, I would open a second store, because as much as rebranding can make sense, Etsy can sometimes have a hard time with the rebrand. And so in this scenario where Etsy had already fed her everything, it was already in motion, it was working, go for the rebrand. If she was like, hey, Jared, I have this idea. I think I can go with humans, and I have a lot of data that's going to prove this for me, and I have this whole line, I would 100% say open a second store. Don't cross promote in what you're doing. Keep that pure, keep that going, keep that target audience in what we're doing. So that's today's episode. When did we open a second store? You know what? I'll share one more thing with you. I'm feeling chatty today. This is true, and this scares people, but it shouldn't scare you unless you are someone who's doing $500,000 to $1 million in sales. So if it's not you, don't worry about it. If it is you, this is something worth discussing. Etsy legit caps at a certain number, meaning your SEO is affected by sales because they can't overwhelm a seller. And so if you start to cruise and your production time starts to back up because you're getting so many orders, you can get hit with this. And Etsy becomes more sensitive to it in bursts of popularity and in really large stores, meaning they have a little bit more protocol to watch really successful stores to make sure that they can keep up with the demand that they're placing. And if they start to see that production's falling behind or that you're pushing production time back, you get capped on what you're doing. Again, oh my gosh, that's terrifying. It's only terrifying if you are between that 500 and $1 million. You're not on Etsy's radar. when you're doing 70. This is for the big dogs. It is a common practice for some of these people when they have a product that is selling off the shelves. Like they cannot keep it in stock. It is moving. They're doing 50 orders a day type thing. 50, 70, 100 orders a day. These people will sometimes, and you know where they learned it from? China. China's really good at this because China comes in. They steal really popular items. They undercut. They sell it a billion miles an hour before they get shut down. And so they just are really good at it. And if you watch the way China does it, they come in, they steal, they undercut, and then they cruise, and then they open multiple stores selling different versions of the product because they get capped. And so they open up different stores, and now they can, Etsy feels like they're spreading the wealth, but they're not spreading the wealth. They're just spreading the wealth to themselves more or less. I've had a few people who've been in that range who do have multiple stores for that reason, to open up the cap that they feel like they sort of hit. And the way they can sort of prove it is to say, like, look, we did 700, we did 700. The next year we did 700, but I opened up a new store selling really similar products, and that store did 400, and my other store did 700. And so it's an indicator of like, yeah, you were kind of capped where you are. Again, the reason I don't talk about this is that this does not apply to a lot of people, but it can be a scary thought to think that you're capped. I'm telling you, I can't say it enough. It is when you are doing hundreds of orders a day. So please don't be afraid of it. Okay. That's it. See you guys.